Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to an AMX viewer replay. I was actually pinged on Twitter about this one, and I took a look and I thought, yeah, it's going to be a pretty good game. This is Venom Shadow. No, Venom... Why do I keep thinking that? Venom Ghost. For some reason, I keep thinking it's Venom Shadow. It's not Venom Shadow, it's Venom Ghost. Not that Venom Shadow wouldn't also be some kind of cool name, I suppose, but that's not Venom Ghost's username. So there we go. It's the thing that I was specifically trying not to say, and I fell at literally the first hurdle. So he's had a little boost, and that's a rare sight in this thing when it's not going downhill to see it approaching top speed, but I think that's going to be about as fast as he ever manages to go in this replay, because it's an AMX 40. It's a good matchup though, and it's easy to say, oh well, it's good when it's top tier, but of course that doesn't happen that often with any tier 4. There are quite a lot of fun tier 4 tanks, but they get down tiered so often that they become not fun, and the AMX 40 is definitely in that category. There are some tier 3s and tier 4s particularly that cope with being up tiered because they have really good guns or they've got really good mobility. Maybe they can compensate by loading the premium shells, but there are a lot of tier 3 and 4 tanks where that's just not true, and I would say this is one of them. So this is a rather comfortable hold down position so far. The armor's actually worked out a bit, but it's gone a bit fuzzy. Less than 2 minutes into this, and the lines have broken. There are enemy tanks everywhere. He's got really not a lot of support right now. There's a couple of tanks further behind him, but most of his team is completely scattered, and the enemy team just seems to be everywhere. It's one of those games where you look at the team list and think, oh, they're only like 2 tanks apart in terms of kills, or is it even only 1 tank apart? But yet somehow the enemy team just seems to be everywhere and your own team seems to be nowhere. It's not that surprising for a low tier game, but as anybody that's played this game for any amount of time knows that you can get that feeling at literally any tier. So Venom's trying to make his way back to the cap, to friendly tanks, to the diminishing number of friendly tanks, but the enemy tanks numbers are diminishing as well a bit. Unfortunately, however, this Swedish tank destroyer is creeping up behind him, and I believe that one has a derp gun, so he actually has to be worried about that a bit. Doesn't have a lot of armor though, which is absolutely fine for his own gun, but as you can see, yeah, that was not particularly nice. Knocked out his commander. 78 damage, not a huge amount, but he's not got a huge amount of hit points to begin with. But fortunately, he's able to take out that guy without taking any further shots. I'm not entirely sure why the tank destroyer just sat there and took it. Maybe the engine got completely knocked out, or I have no idea. They weren't even trying to move. So it would have to be something like that, where they couldn't move their tank, I would guess. So there's good news in that they are equal on numbers, and there's bad news in that they're about 10 seconds away from being capped, and he's having to rush back in an AMX 40. But they have equalised things at least. I mean, it felt like a real scramble there, but his own team was giving as good as they were getting. It's just they didn't quite have the map control to protect their own cap, so it's come down to Venom having to do that himself, which is always a bit of a tall order in an AMX 40. But fortunately he was not so far away that he couldn't get back in time. So that's all of the capping tanks reset. This Panzer 38 actually was trying to get around him in order to hit the side and rear armour, but couldn't really do any more damage, fortunately for Venom, and it was the Su-76M that actually got in another hit there, so he's not left on a lot of hit points at this point. However, with those tanks being done, we're now down to 3 versus 1. His allies are also pretty low health, but surely 3 versus 1 should be quite comfortable. In fact, having said they're fairly low health, that AKV-72 is in fact full health. However, this M2 medium has a derp gun, and so if you're in a tank destroyer with not a lot of armour, that's bad news, as the IKV-72 just found out. The other surviving tank's also an IKV-72, and he's got even less health than that, so yeah, understandably he's a little bit hesitant about trying to rush forwards and take down this M2 medium. The M2 though seems to have at least some idea what they're doing, and well, although the IKV does get in a hit in return, the M2 had enough hit points to survive that shot, so it's now 1 versus 1, but it's 1 versus 1 against a well-armoured tier 4. And so this is actually looking fairly favourable, because unless the M2 medium can get round behind him and put a heat shell in the rear armour, I mean, if he takes any damage frontally to HE, it's not going to do a lot. Not with that, what is it, 75mm derp? It's not a big derp on the M2 medium. I mean, it doesn't really have to be a big derp at tier 4, but yeah, I would rate Venom's chances fairly well here. But you'll see what I mean when I say that the M2 medium player at least seems to have some idea what they're doing, because you will see a bit of behaviour from them that you don't normally expect to see that much in low tier gameplay. But maybe he's doing what Venom's doing. Well, I'm assuming Venom's just, you know, trying something for a bit of a challenge in playing the AMX. Maybe this M2 medium player is doing exactly the same. So he's already gotten in one nice shot and then ducked into cover, although it was a heat shell that did nothing, fortunately for Venom. Venom's got his own heat loaded, but as you can see, he's almost out of the AP. And this is one of those tanks actually where you do, like, you can't just have one kind of ammo as your go-to ammo, because the heat isn't particularly good. The AP when you're top tier is fine, but you're also going to need a fair bit of HE, which is what he has, although he didn't really need it for this particular game because there were too many armoured targets. So there we go. He did take, I think, one tiny bit of damage from an HE shell, but yeah, unless the M2 had time to aim a heat shell, I think that was always against him. But as it was a very satisfying finish for Venom Ghost there, with quite a roster of medals, as you can see. Not only did they have the ace tanker, but there was the defender, of course. There was a steel wall, there was a top gun, a high caliber, and whatever that scouty medal, one of the light tank medals, and I can't remember which one it is. I suspect it's going to be, is that one you get for knocking out light tanks? I can't remember. Anyway, he got another medal which I cannot immediately identify, but actually I probably can, because on my other screen I've actually got it open. So here we go. This is being completely professional. Scout. It was his scout. He got scout. He actually spotted. How did I not realise that that was the scout medal? Anyway, never mind. Yeah, he detected the majority of the enemy team. Somehow. I don't know how, but somehow he got the scout medal on Kharkov. Who knows? So, yeah, that was a pretty respectable result. 1300 base XP. Almost 1,000 better XP than anyone else on his team, and unsurprisingly it was the M2 medium at the top of the enemy team. But even for being top tier with quite favourable matchmaking for an AMX 40, there weren't any Matildas or anything to worry about. That was still a fairly creditable result. So yeah, it's nice to see the duck doing well once in a while. So that's that for that replay. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did, although you probably didn't enjoy it quite as much as I did. But anyway, I'm a little bit special like that. If you did enjoy it, you can leave any comments below. You can hit the like button. You can sub to my channel if you haven't already. And as always, stay tuned for more.